I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Democrats in the House of Representatives just released a report fact-checking and completely scorching MAGA Republicans for all of their lies they're trying to peddle through their committees like the House Oversight Committee and the Judiciary Committee, led by Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin. The House Oversight Democrats just did a point-by-point scathing rebuttal of all of the lies being peddled and laundered by the MAGA Republicans, including the MAGA Republican chair of the Oversight Committee, James Comer. Here is what Jamie Raskin stated in his report. He says, House Republicans constantly insist that they are investigating President Biden and not his adult son. In that case, we can form an obvious judgment on their investigation. It has been a complete and total bust, an epic flop in the history of congressional investigations. The voluminous evidence they have gathered, including thousands of pages of bank records and suspicious activity reports and hours of testimonies from witnesses, overwhelmingly demonstrates no wrongdoing by President Biden and further debunks Republicans' conspiracy theories. Rather than admit this unavoidable truth about their failed investigation, House Republicans have mischaracterized, cherry-picked, and concealed evidence and recycled long debunked conspiracy theories originally peddled by Rudy Giuliani and Trump, all in humiliating subservience to Donald Trump's petulant demand that they impeach President Biden. Humiliating subservience. And so then the Democrats go through point by point. And here's what they say the evidence shows. On the one hand, you have MAGA Republican Chairman Comer has said over and over that his committee is investigating Joe Biden. Quote, our investigation is of Joe Biden. It's always been. As part of this investigation, committee Republicans have received over 12,000 pages of subpoenaed bank records, reviewed over 2,000 pages of suspicious activity reports, and spent hours interviewing witnesses, including 2 former business associates of Hunter Biden. Not only does this voluminous evidence fail to even suggest any wrongdoing by President Biden, in fact, it proves the opposite. Specifically, none of the bank records Comer has released shows any payments to President Biden. None of these suspicious activity reports the committee reviewed alleges or even suggests any potential misconduct by President Biden, nor do these suspicious activity reports show any involvement by President Biden in Hunter Biden's financial or business relationships. Not one of the witness accounts provided to the committee has shown any evidence of wrongdoing by President Biden, including accounts from 2 IRS agents and a former FBI supervisory special agent who were involved in the DOJ's investigation of Hunter Biden. Former business associates of Hunter Biden who have been interviewed by the committee, Eric Schwerin and Devin Archer, explicitly stated they have no reason to believe President Biden had any involvement in Hunter Biden's business deals, much less any reason to believe President Biden took any official action on behalf of his son's business ventures. Mr. Schwerin, who performed bookkeeping and other administrative tasks for then Vice President Biden and therefore had access to his bank records, stated that he was not aware of any involvement by President Biden in the financial conduct of his relatives' businesses, much less any transactions into or out of then Vice President's bank account related to business conducted by any Biden family member. 2 IRS agents who testified before the committee affirmed they do not have any evidence of political interference by President Biden or Attorney General Merrick Garland. The former FBI supervisory special agent interviewed by the committee rejected Republicans' claims that prosecutorial decisions by U.S. Attorney David Weiss or his team were the result of any political interference. Chairman Comer, though, says the biggest, quote, smoking gun that he has uncovered is the money Hunter Biden, a private citizen, received from international business dealings. However, not only has Chairman Comer been criticized by independent fact checkers for misrepresenting Hunter Biden's companies as, quote, shell companies, when they in fact had legitimate business transactions or investments, and falsely claiming that the Biden family received $20 million from foreign sources, public reporting has also confirmed that the committee has not found any direct evidence that President Biden personally benefited from any of his son's business dealings. Now, rather than owning up to the fact that the evidence in his, quote, top priority investigation has established no wrongdoing by President Biden, Chairman Comer has resorted to misrepresenting and distorting this huge body of evidence to make baseless and sensationalistic claims. Chairman Comer has repeatedly and without evidence asserted the falsehood that President Biden has inappropriately received foreign money. Quote, we've got a president of the United States who's taken millions and millions of dollars from bad people in bad countries around the world. We've got a president that's compromised. We've got a president who has violated laws, who should be treated as a criminal. He's the one that's a criminal. These statements are plainly false with respect to President Biden, although they are almost certainly true of Donald Trump. Chairman Comer blatantly misrepresented Devon Archer's statements to the committee, falsely asserting that Mr. Archer admitted that the Burisma executives were squeezing Hunter Biden to try to do everything he could to get the prosecutor Shokin fired because they were going after the corrupt energy company. And lo and behold, a few days later, Joe Biden actually did that. That's false. In actuality, Mr. Archer clarified that he was informed that then Vice President Biden's efforts, leading an international coalition calling for the removal of the corrupt Ukrainian prosecutor Viktor Shokin were, quote, bad for Burisma because Burisma had Mr. Shokin under their control. Burisma, in other words, wanted Viktor Shokin to remain in place, and by removing Viktor Shokin, President Biden's actions and the international coalition would actually harm Burisma and actually harm Hunter Biden. As PolitiFact reported, Archer testified that he had no reason to believe Shokin's removal was because of anything other than the U.S. government's anti-corruption policy in place at the time. Further, Archer said he was not aware of any wrongdoing by Joe Biden, he didn't witness the Bidens discussing Hunter's business, and that he's not aware of any foreign policy that was changed to benefit Hunter Biden, which goes against all the claims that Republicans have made about the Bidens. Chairman Comer and other committee Republicans have falsely suggested that Mr. Archer's interview confirms that Biden was involved in his son's business dealings. In fact, Mr. Archer established that over the course of his nearly decade-long business relationship and friendship with Hunter Biden, he never heard Hunter Biden discuss business with his father and never knew the president to be involved in or knowledgeable about Hunter Biden's business activities. According to the Washington Post, quote, Devon Archer's testimony was hailed as a central breakthrough in implicating Joe Biden. Instead, it has a top ally of Hunter Biden stating under penalty of perjury that Joe Biden was not involved in Hunter Biden's business and that Biden's trip to Ukraine in 2015 was not centered on protecting Burisma at all. Chairman Comer has falsely stated that the alleged financial wrongdoing that the committee Republicans are investigating, including the information reportedly contained in suspicious activity reports, implicate the entire Biden family. In fact, however, none of these suspicious activity reports reviewed by committee staff allege, refer, or even suggest any potential misconduct by President Biden, nor do they show any involvement by President Biden and Hunter Biden's financial or business relationships. Chairman Comer has repeatedly lied, saying the Biden family received over $20 million from our enemies around the world. The Washington Post fact-checked this false claim and confirmed, quote, only about $7 million can be directly attributed to Biden family members, mostly Hunter, while the rest went to associates, according to memos. No evidence has emerged that any of these funds can be traced to Joe Biden himself. Chairman Comer regularly lies about the business activities of Biden family members, for instance, by claiming, quote, there are no legitimate businesses with the Bidens, not a single one. There's nothing of these 20 shell companies that you can say produced a good or service. Similarly, Comer has dishonestly claimed, quote, President Biden and his family have created 20 fake companies, 20 shell companies, that all we can tell on the House Oversight Committee over the past 7 months is that their sole purpose was to take money from foreign nationals and launder it down to at least 9 different Biden family members in their personal accounts. A fact check by the Washington Post established that counter to Chairman Comer's lies, quote, virtually all of the companies, many of which now are defunct, had legitimate business interests. Others had clearly identified business investments. Further, there is no evidence that President Biden had any involvement whatsoever with any of these companies. Let me repeat that. There is no evidence that President Biden, had any involvement whatsoever with any of these companies. Chairman Comer on multiple occasions has lied about then Vice President Biden's email addresses and scheduling with his son, saying Joe Biden was using a pseudonym and he copied his son about a shady transaction where Joe Biden was going to leverage American tax dollars to save his son's butt. Along the same time period, we found a pseudonym where he copied Hunter Biden, and it would lead one to believe this was Joe Biden's way of copying Hunter Biden to say, okay, send it to the Burisma owners and tell them help is on the way. And 5 days later, Joe Biden flew to Ukraine to begin the process of firing the prosecutor in exchange for American tax dollars in the form of foreign aid. False. A fact check by the Washington Post found this was a whopper of a false statement and gave Chairman Comer 4 Pinocchios for his false claims that Biden was sending a secret message to his son about how he was going to tell the Ukrainian president to fire the prosecutor, but the email was sent 2 months after the firing. Skeptics may doubt whether Hunter Biden was copied on the email for family matters, but it's certainly not because of the nefarious purpose suggested by Comer. The fact check also found Chairman Comer misrepresented then Vice President Biden's use of email aliases as unusual, pointing out that it was a common and well-known government practice among high-ranking government officials to avoid having inboxes flooded with messages. Lacking real evidence, the Republicans' investigation has devolved into a voyeuristic and sensationalistic obsession with Hunter Biden that, by Chairman Comer's own account, is counter to a credible investigation. Chairman Comer has even resorted to targeting President Biden's granddaughter and baselessly accusing President Biden of laundering money through his grandchildren to evade taxes. This is just a small sampling of Chairman Comer and Republicans' near daily distortions and straight-up lies about key allegations at the center of their probe. These falsehoods have become the defining hallmark of their failed investigation. The central allegation that Chairman Comer the central allegation of Chairman Comer's baseless investigation, the Burisma conspiracy theory, was peddled by Rudy Giuliani and former President Trump to distract from Trump's first impeachment in 2019. Trump has repeatedly returned to the Burisma conspiracy theory and has made it the centerpiece of both of his re-election efforts. Trump and Rudy pushed these debunked conspiracy claims when he was first impeached in 2019. Trump has returned to these fabrications as part of his re-election campaign, often explicitly seizing on the misinformation promoted by the House Republicans' fantasy-like investigations. Following Trump's lead in nearly every single one of Chairman Comer's regular appearances on Fox and Newsmax, Chairman Comer promotes the long-discredited Burisma conspiracy first pushed by Trump and the notorious liar, fabulist Rudy Giuliani. Contrary to Chairman Comer's insistence that the Burisma deal is not over, this fictitious conspiracy has been debunked by years of investigations and independent reporting. It was debunked by the testimony of witnesses in Trump's first impeachment, debunked by the witnesses interviewed as part of the Senate Republicans' investigation in 2020, debunked by 2020 assessment conducted by Donald Trump's department and entrusted by Donald Trump's Justice Department and entrusted to a U.S. attorney handpicked by Barr. It was debunked by Mykola Zlochevsky, the Burisma executive who allegedly took part in the bribery scheme, as evidenced by a document the committee had in its possession since 2019. Earlier this summer, the same narrative was debunked and ridiculed by former key Giuliani associate Lev Parnas, by the way, who came on here on the MeidasTouch network to tell us about that. In his recent interview with the committee, Mr. Archer became the latest eyewitness witness to debunk it. Addressing years-old secondhand bribery allegations in an unverified 2020 FBI Form FD-1023, Archer explicitly stated that he would disagree with anyone concluding from the 1023 form that Joe Biden was bribed by Zlochevsky, dismissing the allegation as the kind of brag, exaggeration, and fib that are common among Ukrainian businessmen. The confidential human source who originally reported the information to the FBI in 2020 himself noted it was not unusual for Ukrainian business executives to brag and show off that he could not offer and that he could not offer any opinion as to the veracity of the allegations he was relaying. Even Fox's own internal research unit, known as the Brain Room, determined these attacks to be disinformation. Unfazed by this overwhelming evidence of the truth, Chairman Comer has simply been urging Americans to drink from the badly contaminated well of conspiracy theories poisoned by Giuliani, Trump, and foreign agents advancing the interests of the Kremlin and the Chinese Communist Party. And just as President Trump has demanded, Chairman Comer has then used the conspiracy theories as evidence in his probe and as a basis to threaten to withhold funding for Ukraine's defense against Russia's invasion, even shockingly going far as to call Ukraine an adversary of the United States. The letter goes on to talk about all of people who further debunked it, but I'll leave it there. And here's the point. Evidence matters, okay? And if there was actual evidence that showed misconduct taking place, I take that very seriously. But weaponizing these lies and this disinformation to people who want to say, okay, well, is there evidence that says this? And someone says yes, and then it turns out that you're just lying consistently. It's a real big problem, and sadly, that's what we see too frequently, the MAGA Republicans doing over and over again. So I'm glad that the Democrat Committee on Oversight and Accountability is pushing back, count by count, refuting point by point all of these Republican lies. I think this messaging is important. I hope we see more of it. Go to MeidasTouch.com for more. Check us out at Patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Wherever you get audio podcasts, subscribe to the MeidasTouch podcast, and have a great day.
Hey, Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.